तमसो मा ज्योतिर्गमय मृत्योर्मा अमृतं गमय ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः Om. May the Divine lead us from the unreal to the real, from darkness to light, from death to immortality. Om. Peace, peace, peace.
Ramakrishna Charan Shabad.
I'm reading from the book How to Live with God in the company of Ramakrishna by Swami Chaitananda. The topic is Ramakrishna, his name and japa. Who are you? It is extremely difficult to recognize the person called Ramakrishna. Vivekananda, Girish, and many great scholars were puzzled by him. One day, Girish asked the master, "Sir, who are you?" Ramakrishna replied, "Some say I am Ramprasad. Some say I am Raja Ramakrishna. I just live here." Yogi Numa's grandmother read an article on Ramakrishna in Keshav Sen's magazine and came to Dakshineshwar. Ramakrishna did not care for fancy clothing and he did not wear an ochre cloth. He had no rosary nor any external marks on his body. The old grandmother asked the master, "Hello, could you tell me where the Paramahamsa is?" The master answered, "Who knows? Some call him Paramahamsa, some call him young priest, and others Gadadhar Chattopadhyay or crazy Brahmin. Ask someone else about him." Ramakrishna hid himself. He had no desire to make himself known to the general public. Sometimes he indirectly or directly revealed his real nature to devotees. "Master, well, do you find me to be like anybody else?" M. "No, sir. You can't be compared to anybody else." "Master, have you heard of a tree called the Achina? Literally unrecognizable." M. "No, sir." "Master, there is a tree called by that name, but nobody knows what it is." "Master, alas, to whom shall I say all this? Who will understand me?" God becomes man and avatar and comes to earth with his devotees, and the devotees leave the world with him. Rakha, therefore we pray that you may not go away and leave us behind. Master, a band of minstrels suddenly appears, dances and sings, and it departs in the same sudden manner. They come and they return, but none recognizes them. Master to M. The other day, when Harish was with me, I saw Satchidananda come out of this sheath, his own body. It said, "I incarnate myself in every age." It is the Divine Mother herself who dwells in this body and plays with the devotees. The disciples never hesitated to test the master. Each time they did so, the master would pass the test effortlessly. With a smile, he would tell them playfully, "Still you doubt? Have firm faith and strong conviction. He who in the past was born as Rama and Krishna is now living in this very body," pointing to himself. But this time his advent is very secret, like a king who visits his own kingdom incognito. As soon as people recognize him and whisper, he immediately departs from that place. It is just like that. The master revealed his identity at other times as well. Wherever there is any trouble in the Divine Mother's empire, I shall have to rush there to stop it, like a government officer. One who is living his last birth will come here. A person who has sincerely called on God even once will definitely come here. Look, before you begin meditating, think of this, pointing to himself for a while. Do you know why I say this? Because you have faith in this place, me. If you think of this place, that will remind you of God. Look, your chosen deity is in this place, pointing to his body. If you think of me, that will bring recollectedness of your chosen deity in its way.
Now a short period of meditation. Shanti, Shanti. Good morning, friends. In February, we had announced that there will be a talk on Sri Ramakrishna as a human being. We missed that talk to discuss. So we're really fortunate today to have that very topic being discussed by Professor V. Kumar Murty, our own dear Kumar. He likes to be called Kumar. He's Professor V. Kumar Murty in the university and outside the Vedanta Society. In Vedanta Society, he's simple, pure Kumar, like one of us. Nothing more than that, though he's so great. And that, like Sri Ramakrishna, you see, he was an incarnation of God, such a great personality, but he is so simple, so one of us. You feel when you read about him in the gospel, in his life, you just feel that he is one of us. Swami Yogatmanandaji, the head of our Providence Center in US, he gave a talk on Sri Ramakrishna's birthday in Belur, just on 20th February this year. And he started saying that one small girl, when approaches to the temple, she goes to the shrine, and looking to the picture of Sri Ramakrishna, says to her mother, and our Swami was also there, says, "Is he God or is he a man?" Swami Yogatmanandaji says it was a very difficult question, what to reply to that small girl, little girl. Then he got the answer at the time. He said, showing to a chair, "What is this? Is it a chair or wood?" And girl, small in age, but she was so bright, she said, "Oh, I understand." She could understand. So we know Sri Ramakrishna's divinity, his power as incarnation, his touch, his look, his presence, all could make divine. But what is he as a human being? That Kumar will tell us, Sri Ramakrishna as a human being. Professor V. Kumar.
Thank you, Swamiji. Firstly, let me be clear that I won't be so presumptuous as to be claim that I can answer the question. What is Sri Ramakrishna? Sri Ramakrishna as a human being. In general, people hesitate to speak about Sri Ramakrishna. Even senior monks hesitate because the subject is so deep and so profound that we feel that anything we say in words will not do justice to the subject. There's a saying that, I think Swami Vivekananda said that you try to make an image of Shiva, but you end up making an image of a monkey, because you simply can't, it's not even an approximation, you simply miss the mark. So we approach this subject with some degree of trepidation in a way, that it is very, very hard to speak about it. Of course, there is another saying that fools rush in where angels fear to tread. It is, if we don't know anything about him, then we think we can speak about him. But as we study, we learn, we reflect, we think, we start to understand his depth and his profundity, then we hesitate. So with deep understanding, we come to an awareness that words really don't do justice to the topic. Then why are we doing it? If we accept that it's an impossible task, then why are we doing it? Because there is another aspect. The other aspect is this: whatever theological position we might accept, whatever tradition we may belong to, whatever we may think the word avatar really means, there is something about his life and the life of people like him that will inspire us wherever we are and whoever we are, whatever our tradition and our philosophical or theological position. We need not understand what the word avatar means. We need not understand even too much about religion or the divine. Nevertheless, we can derive some benefit by studying the lives of people like Sri Ramakrishna, these great teachers. It might help to clarify our understanding a little bit. I'm sorry, maybe I should speak up a little bit. I have a little bit of a sore throat. So it's worth the attempt because it might help clarify our understanding a little bit. And it might inspire us to examine further. That is, we understand whatever we say now is a temporary answer which will grow with us, with our understanding. And we'll be able to return to this question and add more to it as time will come. But in any case, Swamiji has to some extent simplified the task by narrowing it. It's not a general talk about Sri Ramakrishna, but it is Sri Ramakrishna as a human being. So in some sense, just slightly it's been simplified by restricting it to his aspect as a human being. Now you may say, especially if you are new to this tradition, often in our congregation we preach to the choir. We're all already on the same page, but it's good nevertheless to examine these topics afresh. So if you are new to this tradition or you don't belong to this tradition, you will ask a question: what else was he but a human being? He was born at a certain age, died at a certain point. He's a human being. Now if you ask this, in fact you're in good company. Because as we heard in the reading and in Swami's comments, in the past also, great avatars or great personalities have appeared. Very few people recognize them. In the Ramayana, great sages said they only know Rama as the son of Dasharatha, the prince of Ayodhya. So to say, what else was Sri Ramakrishna but a human being? It's a reasonable question. And as I said, you're in good company if you ask that. If I were to look at the Christian or the Buddhist traditions, from the outside, so to speak, that is not being a member of that tradition, I might say Jesus was a human being. What else was he? Buddha was Gautama was a human being. Notice I deliberately use Jesus rather than Christ because Christ is a title. Jesus is his name. Buddha is a title. Gautama is his name. So when I say Jesus and Gautama, they were human beings. And those who belong to those traditions, the Christian and the Buddhist, won't deny that. But they have in mind that there is something about these personalities that goes beyond the human and into the spiritual realm. Whatever tradition you may belong to, when you refer to somebody like Buddha or Christ or Sri Ramakrishna, people say that these personalities are either direct manifestations of a greater spiritual reality, or they have some intimate connection with such reality that makes them somehow more than human. Christ is described as the Son of God. Muhammad is described as the last prophet. That means these words are meant to denote some intimate connection with a reality that transcends the human. And all of these personalities have one characteristic in common, or so it is claimed, that they can help us to connect ourselves from our human existence to this higher spiritual reality. And moreover, though these personalities have an earthly or human existence, it is felt, especially by members of a tradition, that they continue to exist past the time that they are here in human form, that somehow they are eternal beings. In the Indian tradition, there is the concept of avatar. The word avatar means descent. That's the meaning of the word. So the question is, what descends? Some aspect of universal spirit. It descends. It's supposed to be a metaphorical word, not to be taken literally. But if you use the metaphor, it descends. There is a descent of spirit from some abstract state to a physical embodiment. And that embodiment is called the avatar. According to Swami Vivekananda, the avatar is the highest reading of spirit through the human lens. In Hindu thought, especially in Vaishnavism, in the Vaishnava tradition, a number of great personalities of the past have been designated as avatar. This has been described in the Bhagavatam, one of the holy books, especially in the Vaishnava tradition. And it's also been immortalized in the Sanskrit composition by Jayadeva, the musical composition that I'm sure all of you have heard. From this point of view, Buddha and Christ are also seen as being an avatar. It's not listed Buddha is listed in the Bhagavatam, not Christ. But from our point of view, if we understand the way they are describing this word avatara, then we would include Buddha and Christ. And some of us, I guess everyone here, might feel also that Sri Ramakrishna is an avatar as well, though again not mentioned in the Bhagavatam. In fact, not only might we believe that Sri Ramakrishna is an avatar, but no less an intellect than Swami Vivekananda called him Avatar Varishtaya, greatest among avatars. Now, when people make religious statements, especially about their particular tradition, you might think they're being a little bit, they might exaggerate a little bit, they're being overzealous. When Swami Vivekananda says something, you have to take it a little bit more seriously. Even if we admit that we don't exactly know what he means, still you have to take it seriously and inquire further. But anyway, I think this is a more complicated direction, so I'm going to leave this aspect, because that takes us more into philosophical and theological questions, and they're quite complicated, and usually they cannot be settled. They tend to involve a lot of speculation, and at the end of the day, maybe it's a question of faith. In any case, the label of avatar is something that is usually given after the fact. Looking back, we say, so-and-so is an avatar. Mahatma Gandhi, in his commentary on the Gita, says that it is a label we give when we see a human being who is so great that they seem to transcend even their humanity. So it's a label given after the fact, as we reflect on somebody's life. And another place, Swami Vivekananda says, an avatar is like a tidal wave. There's a level of the water, an ocean or a lake, And sometimes there's a tidal wave and the water rises to such a huge degree. And for generations afterwards, people will point at one point the water was this high. He says, no, not is like that. Mahatma Gandhi's point of view, it's very interesting and it's worth reflecting on, because he doesn't really identify himself with any tradition. But about Sri Ramakrishna, so then what does he say? This person who wants to maintain his independence. What does he say about Sri Ramakrishna? He said, his life shows us the meaning of religion in practice and enables us to see God face to face. It's a very interesting perspective, you see, because he's not a proponent of this tradition. He says his life shows us the meaning of religion in practice. And Mahatma Gandhi all his life said he wants to practice religion and come face to face with his maker. So in Sri Ramakrishna's life, it says he shows us the meaning of religion in practice and enables us to see God face to face. And as I said, in practical terms, this is the fundamental defining characteristic of an avatar. An extraordinary personality who sort of embodies spiritual ideas and helps us to rise to that level as well. So let us look at Sri Ramakrishna's life and what he was as a human being without worrying too much about theological issues, but look at it with this lens of what does it mean for our spiritual life. So in the human aspect, Sri Ramakrishna lived for 50 years. He was born in 1836 and died in 1886. We can consider his childhood, his youth, and adult life. We can consider his student and teacher roles. We can consider his householder and monastic roles. And we can consider the theme of his entire human existence. So we can consider that the theme of his entire human existence, the theme that motivated or animated his whole human life, it was this one question, namely, is God real? That's the theme from his childhood to the end. The question that is foremost on his mind until he got an answer. Is God real? Number one. Number two, if he is real, how can we experience that reality? Not just now and then, but constantly. That's the theme of his life. You can boil everything else down to that. And you can read his life now from that optic. His question is God real? And if so, how can we experience that reality? If you start reflecting on this is a very deep topic. And I will not be able to do justice to all the aspects, even in the few that I just listed. So what I suggest is we're going to discuss this morning. We'll make a beginning. And there are many things that will occur to you as I speak. There will be many things that occur to you that I'm not mentioning. You should make a note of that. And really this, you should think of it as an invitation for all of us to reflect, now and later, what do we mean by Sri Ramakrishna as a human being? And it's a large task, but it's a very fulfilling one. You see, because by recounting the life and teachings of holy people, what are we doing? We're not getting information. Information is very easy to get. By filling your mind with the life and teachings of these great personalities, what we're doing is we're flooding our mind with holy thoughts. Now, just as you want to wash something, you pour clean water on it until you make it clean. In that sense, by flooding our mind with these holy and pure thoughts, we are purifying our mind. And that's the real benefit of it. Actually, it goes beyond today's topic and this talk. The purpose of the Sunday sermon is this kind of satsang. It is to flood our mind with some holy thoughts, to thereby purify our mind. That's it. So therefore, it is it's a worthy task, not only for now, for later as well. And I do seriously suggest that all of you continue to think about this even after this morning. There's a saying, you see, in the Gita, there is a verse, Kathayantas chamam nityam tushyanti jaramanti cha. Constantly speaking about me, they get great delight and they're very happy. And that is the thinking and speaking about these holy personalities in their life and teachings, where we get a kind of fulfillment and happiness, uncaused happiness. Usually our happiness is based on some cause. I got something I wanted. I did something I wanted to do. Somebody gave me a compliment. Something like that. Happiness based, but this is not caused. It is a different kind of happiness. So by thinking and by sharing with each other these ideas, we purify our mind and derive great joy and inspiration. Okay, so let us look at a few aspects of Sri Ramakrishna's life as a human being. First, as a child. As a child, he was full of fun. He was a fun-loving child. But he was especially attracted, if you recall, to dramas and plays that depicted religious themes. Watching such a performance, he could remember verbatim the script of the whole drama. And after it was over, he would gather some of his friends and reenact the entire drama. He would tell everybody their parts and know what they were supposed to say. That amazing memory stayed with him throughout his entire life. Much later in life, when people heard him converse about difficult philosophical and spiritual topics, someone remarked that he must have read a lot of books. And to this, another person who was present said, "No, he," meaning Sri Ramakrishna, "does not read books." And it's not that Sri Ramakrishna was illiterate. He knew how to read and write. We know once, for example, he was trying to teach Latu, who was one of his disciples, the alphabet, but they couldn't get past the first letter. But he was trying. What is amusing and touching about that incident is, firstly, to start with, Sri Ramakrishna has a heavy accent. On top of that, Latu has an even heavier accent. And one is trying to correct the other. That's a very amusing incident to imagine. We also have a record of his handwriting, so we know that he did know how to write. But he was not known to read books. Even the maid knew that. Brinde knew that. In Dakshineswar, when M first came to see the master, and M, being a teacher and a scholar, asked Brinde, "Does he read many books?" And she said, "Oh, goodness, no. They're all on his tongue." Even the maid knew that. In this instance, although someone said he doesn't read books, but in the conversation that I was quoting before, when somebody asked him, "Have you read any books?" and somebody said, before Sri Ramakrishna had a chance to respond, they said, "No, he does not read books," as if like it's some God-given thing, it just dropped from heaven. Sri Ramakrishna's response is extremely important. He says, "I don't, but how many I have heard? How many I have heard?" In other words, that same memory that we saw in him when he was a child, where he could remember verbatim the religious dramas that he heard, stood with him throughout his life. Later in life, when scholars and pundits of different traditions were debating difficult concepts, he could remember everything they were saying. He heard these books. And in fact, in our tradition, the highest truth, it has a name, it's called Shruti, that which is heard. So this is very important. Sri Ramakrishna did not read a lot of books, but in a way he did. How many I have heard. It's not magic. He had as much knowledge and depth of understanding as he did. It's not magic. He heard, he thought about it, and he assimilated it. You know, he used to say, some have heard of milk, some drink it, and some having drunk it are able to digest and assimilate it. And it's only the last kind that benefit from the milk. So it is with all these philosophical and spiritual discussions that used to take place in his room. He listened, he reflected, and then assimilated it and expressed it in his own style. That is how he could tell us such things as the essence of the Gita is renunciation. You know how he said it in a play on words, Gita and Tagi. But it's not a play on words. You know, we're liable to treat it like a joke almost. And say, I don't need to read the Gita because Ramakrishna said this, it is Tagi, said it's over. This is a result of very, very deep reflection, contemplation, that he was able to distill that to its essence. So you have to spend some time thinking about that. It's the result of deep reflection based on knowledge. He didn't just say that as a speculative statement. He heard the Gita. So the Gita itself, remember, is a product of the mind of the highest order. Swami Vivekananda couldn't praise the Gita enough and its author. He said of Sri Krishna, there are no cobwebs in that brain. And what an amazing mind that formulated the Gita. So it is a book to be taken seriously, to be studied and reflected on. And then, as Sri Ramakrishna did, obviously, we have to reflect on it and extract the essence for ourselves. Many people have done this for themselves, and we, each of us, have to do it for ourselves as well. In our time, again, I repeat Mahatma Gandhi as an exemplar. Having studied the Gita, he gave it another title, Anasakti Yoga. It is the yoga of detachment. Now, in giving that title, I see in him, again, a person attempting to understand what Sri Ramakrishna discipline that he went through and try to apply it to himself. So he read the Gita and he came up with this. It is essentially the yoga of detachment. Now, it is, having heard this, all of you know this already, but having heard this, now we have to spend a little time reflecting on these two things. Sri Ramakrishna said renunciation, and Mahatma Gandhi said detachment. What's the relationship between the two, and why did they use these two different words? I'm not going to go into that digression here, that's a good topic, but these are the kind of things we can't take for granted. We have to sit quietly and reflect and try to figure out what they mean by this. In fact, the Gita itself discusses the relationship between the two. But going back to Sri Ramakrishna's memory, listening to the description of this memory, we may find ourselves wishing we had such a memory. Often when you say he had a memory, he remembers everything he heard just once. You say, I wish I had such a memory. You find that kind of reaction. Actually, here's the funny thing. We do. We have it. There are some things we never forget. Especially if somebody did something bad to us, we never forget. There are things might be quite minor, but somehow they stick in our memory. What we care deeply about, we never forget. The same Sri Ramakrishna, who remembered everything he heard about philosophical and spiritual topics, one day asked him, can you explain to me how the tides occur? He didn't know. So M started drawing some diagrams on the sand. Here's the moon, here's the... And he started, and he said, here's the moon, there's the movement of the oceans, and Sri Ramakrishna please stop, I'm getting dizzy. So some things Sri Ramakrishna didn't want to know. Actually, he was getting dizzy because he had a very strong empathetic sense. So when M talked about the movement of the ocean, he was probably starting to move too. So he felt dizzy. What we care deeply about, we understand and we won't forget. This is important. So there were some things Sri Ramakrishna was not interested in. One of his big loss, by the way, was that he wasn't much interested in math. In this sense, no, seriously, I think that it was a loss for Sri Ramakrishna. He didn't care much for formal education. And in this, he's not alone. Most original people have the same view. This is because formal education is a system or a set of systems. It's meant to modulate the least common denominator. And rarely, if ever, can it help the extraordinary people or the people who sort of stand apart. So when he said he doesn't care for formal education, it doesn't mean at all that he was agnostic to learning. He was very seriously interested in learning. He was learning all his life. But for what purpose? Not to get a job or earn a living. As he said, and this is quoted maybe too often, he didn't want a bread-winning education. Again, this is something that we're liable to repeat without thinking through the meaning. Because I ask you, what would you do without a bread-winning education? I mean, Sri Ramakrishna said that, but honestly, what would you do if your education didn't help you to get a job? Many of us see it in that light, and without a job we can't support ourselves or others who depend on us. So what's wrong with a bread-winning education? Sri Ramakrishna's comment is only relevant if you are not satisfied with getting a job and earning a living as the highest aim of life. If you think getting a job and earning a living is the highest aim of life, Sri Ramakrishna's comment is not relevant, so ignore it, it's not for you. It's only when you start to realize maybe there is something more. Yes, I need to get a job and earn a living. These are necessary, but what next? Many of us do ask this kind of question, but usually much later in life. When we're young, we don't have time for such questions. After we have had a ton of experience in life, then we start asking, is there something more? It's a process, and most of us, as I said, take most of our lifetime to do it. But Sri Ramakrishna asked the question at the outset. And it wasn't an idle question. He had the boldness to follow through. He simply said, getting a job is not the highest aim of life. There is something higher and I must go after that. So when he says that he doesn't want a bread-winning education, that's only half the story. The other half is, he has something else that he's aspiring for, some burning aspiration that is pushing him, driving him, and he's testing everything. As Hanuman used to test everything that was given to him, is there Rama in it? Sri Ramakrishna had the criteria, is it going to help me to reach my goal, realize God? And if it's not, then he rejected it. As Hanuman bit the jewel, the pearl that Sita gave him, so there's no Rama in here, so he threw it away. Some of us have some idealism, maybe even that idealism as strong as Sri Ramakrishna. Maybe we start there, but we tend to give up when we face the blows of life. We're brought back down to earth, and we have to rethink our approach. We say, yes, no, I'm idealistic, it's something more than earning a living, and I want to maybe realize God. Then there are people depending on me. Our parents, our children, our siblings. What do we do then? Sri Ramakrishna's idealism was rooted in something deeper that was able to help him withstand those kind of obstacles. And it's not that he didn't have those kind of obstacles. All of these things that I said, parents and siblings in a way, were there with him. And it's not that he was not aware of them. Also, as far as setbacks are concerned, well, as a child, he experienced setbacks. He experienced death. His father died when he was very young. And though he might not have been able to express it himself, he surely understood what that meant, what had happened, and he could see its painful effect on his mother and on his brother, who then had the responsibility of supporting the family. And he tried his best to cheer up his mother, tried a little bit to help his brother maintain the family. But the higher idealism, the need to find God, was simply stronger. So it's not something that came out of ignorance, a very strong pull from this higher idealism. Sometimes, when we find a person who has a sharp focus on an ideal, we may think they're very selfish or uncaring. Certainly, in Ramakrishna's case, this is not true. As I said already, he understood very well the pain of death and the many troubles that people have to deal with in everyday life. He himself, as you know, when his nephew Akshay died, he wept. He understood the pain of death. When his mother passed away, he said, these tears are a debt. You have to cry. His heart was very tender in this respect. But he had also an abiding feeling that beyond human efforts, anything that we as human beings can do, there is a God. And God will take care of us all. And we come here at what I would say the first major revelation that we get from Sri Ramakrishna as a human being, namely the harmony between human effort and divine grace. You must do your responsibility, but as the Gita says, the outcome may not be what you expect. And this is because you and your actions are only one factor in a very complex causal relationship. There are other factors that are in play, and most of them we may not even be aware of. If we say that we have no social or family responsibility because everything is the grace of God, as some may say, but then there is no need to make any effort to live a spiritual life either, because that's also will happen by the grace of God. If you accept effort of any kind, you see, it looks like it flies in the face of the grace of God. And so at first it looks contradictory. But in Sri Ramakrishna's life, especially his manifestation as a human being, his human aspect, we see a kind of harmony that's established between the two. As long as we are conscious of our human individuality, as long as we are conscious of our membership in a human community, we have responsibility and we have to make effort. But we also have to make effort to realize our spiritual goal. And anyone who tries to put this into practice will find how difficult it is. Difficult in the sense that you'll understand many challenges and questions that come in your way that you would not have anticipated. As Mahatma Gandhi would say, you have to burn the midnight oil trying to understand the right thing to do. So on the one hand, Sri Ramakrishna said in unequivocal terms, realization of God is the ideal of human life. At the same time, he said this repeatedly to many people. For example, one devotee named Shambhu Malik, he used to like doing social service. And he scolded him, if God appears before you, are you going to ask for more hospitals and roads and schools? You have the greatest opportunity possible. Would you neglect that and ask for small, relatively speaking, small things like hospital and schools? He also scolded another devotee, Ishan, already elderly. He said, what are you engaged in arbitration and leadership? Take the name of God and let people know you've become mad with the name of God. On the other hand, so that might give you the impression that somehow he's telling you, no, what's happening in the world is not so important. That same Sri Ramakrishna wept for those who are struggling for the basic necessities of life. When he was on pilgrimage, I think it's Deoghar, he saw the poor people and he told Mother, I'm not going any further until you help these poor people. Religion is not for an empty stomach, he also said. So, this is something also that has to be contemplated, understand, because it is apparently a contradiction. And yet in his life, we've seen a harmony of those two. So in his manifestation as a human being, I would say one of the first things is this business about our life in the world and our search for God. So Sri Ramakrishna as a human being shows us the harmony between human effort and divine grace. This grace, as he said, is constantly available. The breeze of divine grace is constantly blowing. Unfurl the sail of your mind. It's very interesting. This is also typical of the way Sri Ramakrishna expresses himself. He gives you the teaching and the metaphor all in one. So there's a stream, there's a boat, it has a sail, and so, in one thing he sort of likened life to that kind of a journey. So divine grace is constantly blowing. Unfurl the sail of your mind, open your mind. So there is never a time or a situation where the grace of God is not with us. But it is we who shut our eyes to the light and cry that it is dark. When we say this, remember, divine grace doesn't mean everything is going to work out in your favor or the way you expect it to. This is because events are very complex and interlinked, and we don't know what forces are at work, and we don't know what the outcome of any effort is going to be. Unfurling the sail of your mind means it will lift you into a state where you find a peace that transcends the vicissitudes of life. A peace that is able to face whatever happens. It's not that things are going to work out in your favor. Necessarily. They might not. Another aspect of his human manifestation was his attitude towards learning and teaching. Again, we don't know if there was a causal relationship, but he had an intense longing to know, as I said, this question of the reality of God and how you realize Him. And that brought to him extraordinary teachers. Whether it's the intensity of his longing or something else, it happened. And with these teachers, he was a voracious learner. He learned very quickly. The teachers were flabbergasted to see how quickly and how extensively he learned. And he said of himself, he's an eternal student. As long as I live, so long do I learn. The same person who said, I don't want a breadwinning education. It's not that he's against learning. He understands the fundamental role of learning. But he has a goal. As a teacher, his examples were drawn from everyday life and not from some academic standpoint. Like Buddha, he spoke in the language of the day, very colloquial. And he used to use expressions that were easy to remember by playing on words. Now you see, unfortunately, those of us who don't know Bengali don't benefit from this because we read it in a nice polished English. But in the original, the words are chosen to sort of have an alliteration, and they're very easy to remember. Like his point about where should you practice your spiritual disciplines? Mane, vane, kone. Yes. In your mind, in a corner, or in a forest. You see that alliteration makes it very easy to remember. Or his advice about how you should behave in company. Jakone jamun takone tamun. I'm sure I'm making Bengali pronunciation mistakes, but the point is, you could see the way it rolls. It's very pithy and easy to remember. So he had a way of giving us a lot of teachings, but also using very simple colloquial language and choosing the words in such a way that they're very impactful on the mind. And then there are aspects of how he actually behaved with people and with himself. Now, since we're running out of time, let me bring this to a close by saying that through his, maybe 2 points, 3 points, through his words, he taught us many aphorisms, as it were, they're aphoristic in a way, precepts that help us in the practice of our spiritual life. And these are not expressed in theological or difficult philosophical language, but very simple colloquial language. And another aspect of it, he didn't use just words. Singing and music were part of his everyday life. And this is something that all human beings can relate to. There's a saying that even snakes are subdued by the power of music. People recount, people who saw him say when he was singing, there's a never to be forgotten sight, absorbed in the thought of God, and that bhavam was infectious. Many would be caught in a spiritual mood without even understanding why or how. Even those who declared themselves at best agnostics, maybe even atheists, like Dr. Sarkar, the doctor who treated him near the end of his life, couldn't help but be swept up in some feeling of devotion that they couldn't explain in his presence. So words, music, and there are many other aspects. Now, as you can see from this, the topic is a very deep one and well worth any time that we spend in thinking and reflecting on it. Swamiji was asking before, a little earlier, about suggestions for our retreat this year. I actually think this is a good topic, Sri Ramakrishna as a human being, because even 2 days we could easily fill up discussing this. And it is something that will involve everybody as well, because there is no obstruction of any philosophical obstruction, any linguistic obstruction. All of us can understand and participate and immediately see the relevance to our life. So let me conclude finally by telling you two things by people who are in a position to best understand Sri Ramakrishna, namely Swami Vivekananda and Holy Mother. So Swami Vivekananda, early in his contact with Sri Ramakrishna, still as the young Naren, was asked by others how he would describe Sri Ramakrishna. And he said I describe him as L-O-V-E. It's the embodiment of love. It's a very interesting thing for Narendra to say. I mean, you see everywhere, what we see of Narendra is he's incredibly sharp, incredibly powerful mind, can chop to pieces anybody's argument, can give a response to anything. And he asks, what do you think of Sri Ramakrishna? He's the embodiment of love. He says that I may or may not accept his words. Why do we go to see him? Because he loves us and we love him. Very profound statement, something to reflect on. And then Sri Saradevi, Holy Mother, what did she say about him? She said, I never saw him sad. He was always full of bliss. And by his life and teachings, now it will be possible for all to realize God. So these are two things that Swami Vivekananda and Holy Mother, both of whom are in an extraordinary position to understand what Sri Ramakrishna was guiding us. So let's take this then as only a starting point and use it to further reflect for each of us on our own. It's very accessible and the benefit is incredible to reflect on Sri Ramakrishna as a human being and the relevance to our spiritual life.